Welcome to the Music Production Podcast. This is your host, Brian Funk, aka AfroDJMac, and I'm here with episode number 3, which I'm calling You Will Never Be a Master. That's right, you will never be a master. Now, I hope you're not offended. I mean no harm. It's more of a philosophy than an insult, so bear with me as I explain. So what do I mean you will never be a master? Something happens to a person when they decide that they've mastered something. They close their mind to learning. They decide that they know everything there is to know on whatever topic it is. And while you may know everything there is to know about something, surely time will change that. Something new will happen, a new development, a new software release, a new genre of music, a new instrument. Something's going to happen, a new way of thinking about music. If you decide you're a master at something, you're not going to pick up on that. You're going to close your mind to it. And as a teacher, I teach high school English. I teach Ableton Live for Berkeley Online, and I do some private lessons, and I work with other people all the time. As a teacher, there's always something to learn, even from your least capable or least experienced student. There's something they bring to the table. What is it? What can you learn? I think if you keep the mindset of an everlasting, student for life, you will pick up on so much more. You will learn things. You might learn a lot by what not to do, watching people make mistakes. Of course, that's a great way to learn. It's better sometimes to watch other people make the mistakes so you don't have to do it yourself. But if you have the master mindset, you're not going to really see that. You're just going to see yourself as this elevated person. I'm on a different level than them. They wouldn't understand. And that's really destructive. So it's really important not to go there. Always look for opportunities to learn. Think about some of the people you may know, or people in the limelight, famous people that have gotten to that point where they think they are a master, and suddenly that's when they start failing. That's when the problems start happening, where their music doesn't come out as good, or their performance is off. Think of athletes, it happens a lot. Sometimes the glitz and glamour of fame comes in, and they feel maybe they don't have to train as hard. They get less hungry to grow. I'm thinking maybe about someone like, I don't want to call people out, never mind. But I've seen it happen before, and I'm sure you have too. They just don't have the same hunger, the hunger to learn. It's a dangerous place to be. I've seen it. I know people. Don't become one of them. Keep that idea that you can always learn something from everybody. Everybody has something to teach you, even if they have nowhere near the abilities you have. You can learn something from them. So important to keep that mindset. So that's today's little lesson. You will never be a master. Now, just as a little side note, this is a much shorter episode than any of the other 2 I've done. And part of that is because we're not really sure where this is going to go yet. I'm not sure how this podcast is going to work out, and I wanted to just start it, and mostly to be an example, because so much of the time we want things to be perfect before we do something. We want to have everything figured out, and we wait too long, or we never get started, and we just have this idea, and ideas are great, but they're nothing without action. You have to take action. You have to get moving. So for me, with this podcast, I've been talking about doing it for way too long. I should be embarrassed of myself. But finally, I've decided to do it. And because I know that all the planning I've done, all the thoughts I've been thinking, and all the places I want to take this, all those like kind of dreams and hopes are what have been getting in my way, because I've got a little bit of a vision of where I want this to be. But I've let that prevent me from getting started. So part of the things I've done is to keep this informal and unrehearsed as possible, because I'll do it if I'm allowed to be that way. If I'm deciding that it needs to be perfect, I'm probably not going to do it. And that kind of goes in with what I said on episode 2 about making bad music. It's important to just do it and then, correct course along the way. I think we see that a lot in technology these days, maybe for better or worse, but I think ultimately for better, where maybe take an app on your phone, for instance. They get released with minimal features, sometimes even bugs, and they get put out there, and then they get developed on. I was reading a little bit about an app that had come out recently, and the comment section was interesting to me. It said, "What? No audio bus capability? It doesn't support Ableton Link? No Bluetooth MIDI?" And while, yes, I agree, those are some de factos that I'd love to see in pretty much every app that's released, I think it's really hard to put something out that has everything you want right from the get-go. It's one of the beauties about software is that it can be updated. It's not really like it was in the old days when you bought some piece of hardware, it was what it was and its capabilities were there. We live in a different age where we can update things. There's firmware upgrades, there's app updates. So to kind of hate on something for not having everything it's supposed to have is, I think, counterproductive. Because what I've seen in many apps is that they start out kind of minimal, doing their basic function, and then they add on to it. They build upon it, and they grow. Take Instagram. It didn't have video when it started. It didn't have live chat. It didn't have any of that stuff. But if it didn't just start putting out the bare bones app, it never would have gained its user base that it has now. And it wouldn't have had the opportunity to get to have all these things. And maybe someone else would have came along and made something else that would have, negated the need for Instagram when it came out. It's very true that I think you need to move before things are perfect. Correct course as you go. And I'm saying this in kind of a meta way as I'm talking about my own podcast, but I think it's true about all of our creative endeavors. Maybe think about the next thing you want to do. Boil it down to what is the most important part? What is the one thing it needs to have for it to be functional? And just get that right and add to it later. For me, for my podcast, the music production podcast that I see in my head as this glorious thing with interviews with wonderful thought leaders and producers and philosophers and techniques and tutorials and gear review. There's all kinds of stuff I've got in my mind. But what is the thing it really needs? It just needs to be someone talking about music production. So it kind of took me listening to my own advice for a long time to get started, but that's what this is about, to just get going. And I've kind of decided that I'm not really going to have strict rules to the podcast where it needs to be X amount of minutes. A lot of my favorite podcasts are pretty consistent. 3-hour interviews on, say, Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss, or Sonic State is about an hour, and so is Darwin Gross's Art Plus Music Plus Technology, about an hour, 45 minutes or so. Every single time it's consistent. It is really nice. But I'm not going to worry about that. That's just a decision, and that's part of the informality and the unrehearsed nature of this show, is that it'll kind of let us have all kinds of little types of episodes. So maybe you only have 10 minutes and this is a good episode for you. Or maybe you've got a longer amount of time and one of the other episodes is more appropriate for where you are in that day. Maybe it just depends on where you're driving. But expect some variety. And if you can take this little lesson to your own life, think about whatever it is that you probably want to get working on. I'm sure there's something. Maybe it's just a track. Maybe it's just a song or a beat or a remix, or maybe it's something bigger. Maybe it's even remodeling your basement or something to be a new studio, just get going. Don't wait. Correct course along the way. And I think you'll find that just starting creates momentum. And so many of the things in our life depend on momentum. Remember in high school when you had to start an essay, and that was the hardest part, but once you got started, it kind of flowed? It's the same thing. Just get going. It's what I'm doing now, and I hope, if nothing else, that act alone can inspire you to put something cool out into the world. So thanks again for listening. It's really an honor if you are hearing my voice right now at this point. This is Brian Funk, aka AfroDJMac. Thank you for listening to the Music Production Podcast, Episode 3.